If you think love can't turn deadly, wait until you hear this story. Because in a quiet suburban town, a husband and wife's perfect marriage was shattered in one single night. A robbery, a thief, and a betrayal no one saw coming. By the end of the story, you won't know who to pity or who to fear. Before we dive in, make sure you subscribe and stick around until the end, because this is only the beginning of a case that will take twists so shocking you won't believe it's real. It started on a rainy Thursday in Oakwood Heights. Richard Hale, 42, was the kind of man neighbors described as steady. He owned a small auto shop, worked long hours, and had one weakness: his wife, Emily. She was younger, beautiful, and charismatic in a way that drew people in. But behind closed doors, their marriage was fraying at the edges. Argument about money, late nights at work, a distance Emily no longer even tried to hide. Then came the night that changed everything. The storm was relentless, hammering against the windows as Richard locked up his shop and headed home. Inside their cozy, two-story house, Emily was curled up on the couch with a glass of wine, scrolling through her phone. She didn't hear the first sound, not until the shadow moved across the living room. A man masked, armed, and dripping from the rain. Emily froze. The thief didn't yell. He didn't threaten her. He simply motioned toward her wedding ring. Richard burst through the door moments later, shouting, charging at the intruder. A struggle followed. The thief was quick, desperate, and before Richard could even land a hit, the man was gone. Out the back door with Richard's wallet, Emily's jewelry, and the look in his eyes Emily could never forget. But here's the part no one understood at first. Emily didn't seem scared. If anything, she looked fascinated. In the days after the robbery, something in Emily changed. Richard was furious, calling the police every hour, demanding action. But Emily? She was quiet, distant, almost distracted. She told Richard she was fine, that the thief hadn't hurt her, that she just needed time. But that was a lie, because while Richard was talking to detectives, Emily was doing something else. She was searching, and 3 weeks later, she found him. His name was Luke Carter, 29 years old. No address, no job, and a rap sheet full of petty crimes. He was dangerous, reckless, and Emily was obsessed. She started meeting him in secret. At first, it was just to confront him. Or at least that's what she told herself. But soon, the confrontation turned into conversation. Conversation into flirtation. And before long, Emily Hale, suburban wife, school board volunteer, was having an affair with the man who had robbed her home. Richard never suspected. Not at first. He was too busy trying to fix their finances, too focused on repairing a marriage that Emily had already abandoned. But neighbors noticed. They saw Emily driving out late at night. They saw her smile in a way she never smiled for Richard anymore. And then, Richard saw it too. One evening, he followed her, straight to a cheap motel on the edge of town. And there, through a rain-streaked window, Richard saw the truth. His wife, in the arms of the thief who had stolen everything from him. That night, Richard didn't go home. He sat in his truck, hands shaking, staring at the motel until the lights went out. By morning, he had made a decision. He was going to confront them. But Emily was already one step ahead. When Richard came home, ready for war, Emily was calm. Too calm. "Richard," she said, her voice soft, almost pitying. "You don't understand. Luke loves me. He's not like you. He sees me." Richard's jaw clenched. "He's a criminal, Emily. He broke into our home." "And you never fought for me," she whispered. That night, Richard slept in the guest room, and by morning he was dead. The police would later say it looked like a burglary gone wrong. Richard's body was found at the bottom of the stairs, his neck broken. Emily told detectives she'd heard a noise and found him like that. Her voice trembled. Her tears looked real. But if you looked closer, if you paid attention, you could see the cracks, the bruises on Richard's arms, the missing security footage, and the fact that Emily wasn't wearing her wedding ring at the funeral. Detective Karen Mills wasn't buying it. She'd been on the force for 15 years, and something about Emily's grief felt rehearsed. And when Luke Carter's name popped up on a traffic stop just 2 blocks from the Hale house the night of Richard's death, the pieces began to fall into place. But there was one problem: no proof. And Emily knew it. In fact, she flaunted it. 2 weeks after Richard's funeral, she sold the house, drained the joint account, and moved into a small apartment on the south side of town. And who did the neighbors see moving in with her? Luke Carter. But what Emily didn't know was that someone was watching her. It wasn't the police. It wasn't the neighbors. It was Richard's sister. Melissa Hale had never trusted Emily. From the day they met, she said Emily had a hunger in her eyes. And now, Melissa was certain her brother's death wasn't an accident. She started following Emily, taking pictures, logging her every move. And then, one night, Melissa saw something that would change everything. Emily and Luke weren't just lovers. They were planning something. Late-night meetings, whispered arguments in parking lots, a bag of cash exchanged. Melissa brought it all to Detective Mills. And that's when the real investigation began. Police started digging. They traced Emily's calls. They pulled old security footage. And what they found was worse than anyone expected. 2 weeks before Richard's death, Emily had taken out a life insurance policy. $500,000. And the signature? It wasn't Richard's. By now, Emily was spiraling. Luke was getting reckless, flashing money around town, spending it on cars and alcohol. And Emily? She was starting to realize something terrifying. The man she destroyed her life for was turning on her. One night, neighbors heard shouting from their apartment, glass shattering, a woman crying. By the time police arrived, no one answered the door. The next morning, Luke was gone, and Emily looked like she hadn't slept in days. But Luke hadn't just disappeared. He'd left something behind. In the drawer of the nightstand, wedged beneath a pile of receipts, was a burner phone. One Emily didn't know existed. Detective Mills got the warrant. And when she opened that phone, she found something chilling. Photos, dozens of them, of Richard, taken days before he died. And that's where the story is about to turn darker than anyone imagined. Because in those photos, there's one face staring back from the background. Not Emily, not Luke, someone else. And whoever they are, they've been watching all along. The photos on that burner phone changed everything. Detective Karen Mills stared at them, her stomach twisting tighter with every click. Richard Hale in his driveway, Richard at the grocery store, Richard at his shop. Someone had been tracking him for weeks before his death, but it was the last photo that made her blood run cold. In the background of Richard's shop, blurred by the reflection of a window, was a face. Not Luke Carter, not Emily, someone else. Karen enhanced the image. Male, late 30s, lean build, a scar running down his jaw like a jagged lightning bolt. Whoever he was, he wasn't just watching Richard. He was smiling. Detective Mills brought the phone to Melissa Hale. Richard's sister nearly collapsed when she saw the scarred man's face. That's Kyle Jennings, she whispered. He grew up here. He and Richard. She stopped herself. What about him? Mills pressed. Melissa hesitated. They used to be friends. But something happened. Richard, he filed a restraining order years ago. I don't know why. He wouldn't talk about it. Now, the case was no longer about a jealous wife and her thief. It was about something far more dangerous. Because if Kyle Jennings had been stalking Richard, and if Emily and Luke didn't even know it, then this story was about to crack wide open. Meanwhile, Emily was unraveling. Luke had vanished 2 nights earlier, and she was convinced he'd left her for good. The apartment was a mess, wine bottles on the floor, unpaid bills scattered on the counter. Emily barely noticed the knock at the door. She opened it to find a package on the floor. No note, no return address. Inside, a single Polaroid. It was her and Luke, taken through their living room window. And on the back, in neat, sharp handwriting, "You're next." Emily's scream echoed down the hallway. Detective Mills got the call an hour later. By the time she arrived, Emily was shaking so hard she could barely hold a glass of water. "I don't know who's doing this," Emily whispered. "I swear it's not what it looks like. Luke was supposed to protect me." "Protect you from what?" Mills asked. Emily's eyes darted to the window. From him. Who? Emily swallowed hard. Kyle. The name hit Detective Mills like a hammer. This wasn't just a crime of passion anymore. This was a hunt. Over the next week, everything escalated. Kyle Jennings' name brought up a history darker than anyone imagined. Assault charges, breaking and entering, a string of restraining orders from multiple women. But the most disturbing detail? He'd worked at Richard's auto shop 10 years ago, and he'd been fired. Melissa filled in the rest. Richard caught him stealing. He didn't just fire Kyle. He humiliated him, took him to court, got him locked up for 2 years. Kyle swore he'd get revenge. And now it seemed he had. But if Kyle was the real puppet master, then what did that make Emily and Luke? Pawns or partners? Detective Mills pulled Emily in for questioning. Emily, she said, sliding the photos across the table. You knew Kyle Jennings, didn't you? Emily's hands trembled. Yes, she whispered. Did you know he was watching Richard? Emily's silence was answer enough. Emily, if you don't tell me the truth, Kyle's going to kill you next. Is that what you want? Emily's lip quivered. I didn't think he'd. I thought it was just a game. He told me if I helped him, Richard wouldn't get hurt. Detective Mills leaned closer. Helped him how? And then Emily said the words that made even the seasoned detective's blood run cold. I introduced him to Luke. It was all starting to make sense. Kyle had used Emily. Emily had brought in Luke. And together, they'd been pieces in a revenge scheme Kyle had been planning for over a decade. The robbery wasn't random. It was staged. The affair? Manipulated. Richard's death? Just the beginning. And now Kyle was cleaning up his mess one person at a time. 2 nights later, police found Luke Carter. He was alive. Barely. Tied to a chair in an abandoned warehouse. Beaten within an inch of his life. Before slipping into unconsciousness, Luke managed 2 words. He's coming. For who? Mills demanded. Luke's bloody lips trembled. Emily. And then he passed out. Detective Mills raced to Emily's apartment, but the door was swinging open. Inside, the place was wrecked. Broken glass, overturned furniture, and on the wall, written in red spray paint, Round 2. Emily was gone, and in her place, another Polaroid. This one was worse. It was Emily, bound and gagged, sitting in the trunk of a car, and behind her, Kyle Jennings, smiling. The hunt for Kyle had just become a race against time, and Detective Mills knew one thing. This wasn't about jealousy anymore. It was about revenge, and Kyle wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. Detective Karen Mills had seen her share of monsters, but Kyle Jennings wasn't hiding in the shadows anymore. He was taunting them. The Polaroid of Emily bound in the trunk of that car was a message. Catch me if you can. And Mills knew she had one chance to stop him before Emily Hale became his next corpse. The manhunt started at dawn. Kyle's old haunts, abandoned warehouses, the dingy bars on the edge of town, everywhere was swept. But Kyle wasn't there. Then a call came in. A traffic cam had picked up the car in the photo, a rusted black sedan with mismatched plates. It was heading west, out of Oakwood Heights, into the woods where the roads thinned and the police radios went quiet. Mills didn't wait for backup. She floored it. The cabin was almost invisible, swallowed by trees and silence. Its windows were boarded up, its porch sagging like it hadn't been touched in years. But in the dirt driveway, there it was, Kyle's car. And in the trunk, blood. No Emily. Mills' stomach dropped. Inside the cabin, it was worse. The walls were covered in photos. Richard Hale, Emily, Luke, even Melissa. Lines of red string connected them all. And at the center, a single word scrawled in jagged black paint. Payback. But it was the folder on the table that changed everything. Inside were court records. 10 years ago, Richard Hale didn't just fire Kyle. He testified against him. Claimed Kyle had stolen thousands from the shop. Kyle served 2 years because of it. But buried beneath the legal documents was something else. Something Richard never told anyone. A statement from a teenage girl, Melissa Hale, Richard's own sister. And her words were damning. Kyle threatened me. Richard saved me. He said if Kyle ever came near me again, he'd bury him. This wasn't just revenge. This was personal. Kyle wasn't just punishing Richard. He was punishing everyone Richard had ever loved. And Emily? She was next. The FBI was called in. Roadblocks were set up. But Kyle was a ghost, always one step ahead. Then, just as Mills was starting to lose hope, a call came through from a gas station clerk 2 towns over. A woman had come in, wrists bruised, barefoot, frantic. Emily Hale. By the time Mills got there, Emily was sitting on the floor of the gas station, clutching a torn blanket around herself like it was armor. He's not done, Emily whispered. He said it's not over. He said Richard wasn't the only one who deserved to die. Where is he now? Mills pressed. Emily's voice cracked. He's going after Melissa. The realization hit like a thunderclap. Kyle wasn't hiding anymore. He was hunting. Melissa Hale had been Richard's one soft spot, the only family he had left. And if Kyle wanted to finish what he'd started, he'd go through her. Mills put out an emergency alert. Melissa was placed under protective custody. But deep down, Mills knew Kyle wouldn't stop. Not until he got exactly what he wanted. That night, Mills sat in her car outside Melissa's safe house, her gun heavy in her holster, her eyes burning from exhaustion. Then, just past 3 a.m., her phone buzzed. A single text from an unlisted number. A photo. Melissa. Gagged. Bound. And behind her, Kyle Jennings. Smiling. The message beneath it. Round 3. Come alone. Detective Mills' hand tightened around the phone. She knew it was a trap. But she also knew one thing. If she didn't go, Melissa Hale was already dead. And so, with her gun loaded and her badge tucked away, Detective Karen Mills drove into the night, straight toward Kyle Jennings, and into a nightmare she might not come back from. Detective Karen Mills gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. The road ahead was a winding ribbon of black, swallowed by the night. Every mile brought her closer to Kyle Jennings. Every mile brought her closer to either saving Melissa Hale or finding her body. She didn't call for backup. Kyle wanted her alone. And deep down, Mills knew this wasn't just about law and order anymore. This was personal. The cabin loomed in the distance, its windows glowing faintly. As she approached, she saw the front door wide open. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of gasoline and rotting wood. And there, tied to a chair in the center of the room, was Melissa Hale, gagged, terrified, her eyes locked on Karen's. And behind her, Kyle Jennings, the scar on his jaw twisted as he smiled. Detective Mills, he drawled, his voice sharp as broken glass. I was wondering when you'd show. Let her go, Kyle, Mills said, leveling her gun. Kyle laughed, a low, hollow sound. Oh, you don't get it, do you? This isn't about her. It's about him. Richard Hale, the man who ruined my life and didn't even have the guts to tell the world why. Karen's jaw clenched. Richard put you away because you were a thief. You nearly destroyed his sister's life. Kyle's eyes flashed with rage. That's what he told you. But he wasn't a hero, detective. He was just another liar. He stepped closer, his words dripping with venom. Richard didn't just fire me. He set me up. He planted the evidence. And Melissa, sweet little Melissa, she played along because her big brother told her to. They ruined me. And now I'm going to ruin them. Melissa shook her head furiously, tears streaming down her face. Kyle leaned in, his grin widening. And you, detective, you get to watch. Mills didn't flinch. You want revenge? Fine, but this ends tonight. Kyle tilted his head, amused. You think you can stop me? Mills didn't answer. She fired. The bullet hit the chain holding Melissa's chair in place, snapping it clean. Melissa fell forward, and Mills charged. Kyle lunged. The gun went off again. The cabin erupted into chaos, splintered wood, overturned furniture, the stench of gasoline sharp in the air. And then the fire. Somewhere in the struggle, a lantern shattered, and flames began crawling up the walls. Kyle grabbed Mills by the throat, his scarred face inches from hers. If I'm going down, he hissed, you're coming with me. But Mills didn't hesitate. She drove her knee into his chest, ripping free just long enough to slam him into the burning wall. The heat was unbearable. Smoke filled her lungs. But she got Melissa out, dragging her through the doorway, coughing and choking as the cabin roared behind them. And Kyle, he was still inside. When the flames reached the gas canisters stacked in the corner, the explosion lit up the forest like daylight. And just like that, it was over. The next morning, the fire crews found only charred wreckage. No body. No Kyle Jennings. Some say he died in that blaze. Others say he's still out there, watching. But Detective Karen Mills didn't care. She only knew one thing. Melissa was alive. Emily Hale was in custody. And the twisted web of betrayal, jealousy, and revenge that had cost Richard Hale his life had finally been untangled. But there's one last truth. Emily Hale, broken, shaking, and in handcuffs, looked at Detective Mills and whispered, "I didn't love Kyle. I was afraid of him, and I was too weak to stop him." And in that moment, Mills realized something that would haunt her forever. Richard Hale didn't just die because of jealousy. He died because of silence. And that's the lesson. Evil doesn't always come crashing in with sirens and gunfire. Sometimes it seeps in quietly through fear, through secrets, through the things people are too afraid to say. If you see something wrong, speak. If you know someone is in danger, act. Because silence can kill just as surely as any bullet. And if you were gripped by this story, don't let it end here. Like this video. Share it. Comment your thoughts on what you think happened to Kyle Jennings. Did he die in that fire, or is he still out there? And if you want more stories like this, dark, true, and unforgettable, subscribe. Because the next one, you won't see it coming.